I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're delighted to introduce you to a wonderful author. His name is Zoran Svorcan, and he has written a powerful book. It is called Erzi, Fragments of a Life. This poignant book is a tribute to his grandmother, Erzi, a Jewish woman who lived through the tumultuous times between World War I and World War II. Her manuscript, which tragically ends before her capture and death in Auschwitz, is brought to life by this author, intertwining her words with additional contemporary insights and family history as well. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today, and we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful book. The links are below this interview. Zoran, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Not a problem.
This is such a great story. Tell us a little bit about the inspiration about bringing your grandmother's story to the public and how you actually came across her manuscript.
It's it's a little complicated, right? There are quite a few wars in Europe. Like every little while, there is a war, and apparently there's everywhere.
Yeah.
So there was a war in 90s in former Yugoslavia when it disappeared and became like 8 different nations. Uh, we decided to uh, leave that place, which was not really the same place it used to be. Uh, and Fortunately for me, I've had a grand aunt, which is a sister of Erzi.
Mhm.
Uh, she left Hungary in 1936
Mhm.
uh, when Hitler came to the power in Germany. So they kind of smartly predicted what may have happened.
Right.
Unfortunately, my grandmother uh, at that time, the book is ending at 1939, so it doesn't cover the rest of her life, where
Mm.
she remarried and she lived in ghetto in
Mhm.
Hungary. While in ghetto in Hungary, they didn't really touch them until 1944, uh, when when Germany actually took over Hungary, and they deported them all
Mm.
in Auschwitz and similar uh, places. So never ever heard about her. Anyhow, back in the current war,
Mhm.
uh, so we decided to come here. Uh, my grand aunt helped us a little bit in as much as she could, because she was an older lady, like 89.
Mhm.
Uh, but that helped. Anyway, unfortunately, she broke her hip, and then she broke her hip again, and then, older people died that way.
Mm.
So she died in the hospital, uh, and so we went through her belongings, which we really didn't take. She was like a tiny lady.
Yeah.
People kind of get
Shrink a little
smaller.
bit when they get
Yeah,
older.
yeah,
Yeah.
shrink a little
Yeah.
bit, right? And so there was nothing to really take, but we come across that manuscript, which was like written in. We used to call it the like fleece paper, which is like very thin
Mm-hmm.
paper, and it was written on a typewriter, but the old one, like
Mm-hmm.
you can see it.
Yeah.
It's on the picture on the last page of the book, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's yellow. I don't know why. So, but it was written in German
Mm.
because it's complicated. The place they were living, they were like relatively rich
Mm-hmm.
people, right? They have their own industry, uh, but the place where they lived were changing hands during the time. So it was like Austrians, it was Hungarians, and it was Serbians.
Mm-hmm.
So in her house, they spoke four languages,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but three were official at the time. Whoever was on in power. Anyway, so she wrote the book in German.
Mm-hmm.
She even complained in the book that it was like a little bit too many languages for
Mm-hmm.
for one household.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so I've had I have a friend who is a German
Mm-hmm.
here in New York, and I asked him for to translate it. So from German, I figured that would be a good. He is totally fluent in English, of course. Uh, Nothing is for free, of course.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's okay. Uh, that was my project. I didn't mean to make money from the book. I
Right.
actually wanted to pay a tribute
Yeah.
to my grandmother who actually wrote something, did something
Mm.
actually. And so he did it. Like it took him 3 years though, but
Mm.
it's a process.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then I had like a nice Jewish lady uh, who is professional redactor, so she redacted it.
Mm-hmm.
I find that to be kind of an interesting
Right.
combination,
Right.
right? And finally, uh, the book got picked up uh, with the publisher,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the end of the story. So the story was like just about 10 years,
Mm.
but I kind of feel that I accomplished what I wanted.
Yeah.
Whatever else happens, of course, I want the book to reach
Right.
more people because the story is interesting. It's about an independent woman who was traveling through Europe. Fortunately, she got enough money to do that. She was in there were like women's schools.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so she was one in Vienna, where she was taught by young,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is interesting because I'm psychiatrist. She was also bipolar, so she ended up it's
Mm.
described in the book. She ended up in a hospital, and it's interesting to see how that looked like at the time and how that looked like from the
Yeah.
perspective of patient, not real doctor. Trust me, we are better now.
Yeah.
Not great, but we are better.
Yeah. Tell me, what do you readers take away from the book? We live in challenging times where there's still anti-Semitism. I mean, it's so apparent now during this crisis in Israel after the attack by Hamas. And, so here we are more than a half a century later, and there's still such, animosity towards Jews in this country and beyond. So
it's
is there a lesson you're hoping people take away from
it's
reading the book?
kind of, I hear you. It's kind of palpable in the book, in her writings, and in my upbringing, right?
Mhm.
There was always like animosity toward Jews for whichever reason is that. I have my theories, but you know, everybody's got fun, so
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
doesn't matter. Uh, so, but it permeates through the book that her fear is rising by a rise of Nazis
Mm.
in Germany, because as it is now, the Germany is the most powerful country in Europe, clearly, and it's important, but that there were a lot of Jews in Germany, and they were like rich,
Mhm.
many of them, not all of them,
Right.
but many of them, right? And then that was one of the reasons, in my view,
Yeah.
why they were like thrown out,
Yeah.
basically, to and finally, at the end of the story, like there's almost no Jews in Germany.
Yeah.
There's almost no Jews in general in Europe.
Right.
Like they're in Israel.
Right.
I'm not 100% sure that's
A healthy
actually
solution necessarily.
that necessarily
Yeah.
right.
But
You
you
know,
but the UN thought, and most of the world thought at that point, that we couldn't let happen in Germany happen again, and that the Jews deserved a homeland and their ancestral homeland.
I well,
Yeah.
the movement started before, right?
Right.
The Zionist movement,
Right.
uh, and I understand that,
Yeah.
but I if you ask me, I would rather keep what I've had.
Hmm.
By the way, everything was taken by Germans first,
Right.
and then by communists, because former Yugoslavia was under communism till 1948.
Right.
Then they were independent, but not really independent, mostly. So you got nothing.
Yeah.
Uh, so you know, it's hard to move from the place like Berlin
Yeah.
to the place, whatever place in Israel is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's a desert,
Well, the
right?
lives were certainly upended. Millions of lives obviously lost, other lives upended, other lives turned inside out. I mean, obviously, this was a humanitarian nightmare. It was an economic nightmare. And it's a generational nightmare because people live with
Absolutely.
the pain from that period till this day. And I really do feel like the scabs are being ripped off now when we see what's happening in Israel and we see the reaction in this country by some who are actually protesting in in support of the murderers, which is mind blowing for sure. But I think your book is an important book. I think it'll remind people of the struggles during World War I and World War II. And I think illustrating it through the life of one person, your grandmother, Erzi, really brings it to light, really puts a human face on it. Zoran Svorcan has written a wonderful book. It is called Erzi, Fragments of a Life. It is based on his grandmother's manuscript. He has expanded upon that, and you will get to see the life of a Jewish woman, a strong Jewish woman who lived through tumultuous times during World War I and World War II. It's a powerful read. It's an important read. It's highly recommended. Zoran, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Oh, you are so very welcome.
Appreciate your time. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.